So we are very happy today to welcome Mr. Kesh, who will be sharing with us, first of all, a scientific explanation on how to live on light, among many other subjects that he is able to share thanks to his great knowledge and things that can actually transform the world. So first of all, let us, Mr. Kesh, introduce himself to our audience, to us today.
Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Kesh. I was born in Iran, and I am graduate from Queen Mary College, University of London, as a nuclear engineer. The life of a scientist begins from the point when you start asking questions. And from early in childhood, the explanation of gravity and energy was not acceptable to me the way it was explained. So over 40 years, I set out to discover how gravity is created. And in that sense, by understanding it, we build systems which replicates the working of a planetary system. So what has been the mystery in the world of science has been that every entity, be it the sun, be it the earth, be it the moon, be it the proton, electron, the universe, the galaxy, has two properties. One is gravity, and the other is what we call magnetical, or the atmosphere. The magnetical is what we call atmosphere, and gravity is what we call the gravitational field forces. If it's too hard to understand, is when you have a magnet, you have similar poles rejecting each other, and the similar poles attracting each other. So what the two dissimilar attract is called gravitation, they gravitate towards each other. The two dissimilar poles which get attracted to each other, the other name for it is gravity. They gravitate towards each other, so that's gravity. And the similar poles which they repulse each other, there are fields which go out to keep them separate. That creates the atmosphere around the magnet. But in reality, in the world, we don't have flat rectangular magnets. The magnets are in a spherical shape like Earth. So the fields which leave the north part or the exit have to enter through the entry part, or what we call the south pole. So there has been a question, where is the separation between north and south in like the Earth, in the magnetic field? In fact, there is no separation. In the world of physics and what we see in the planetary system, the magnetic fields come out of the exit pole, what we call the North Pole, and at the same time, the gravitational field in the center of the planet pull these fields back to itself. So the same fields as get pulled back towards the planet, they enter the planet through the South Pole. So the same field as it goes through the planet absorbs or attracts some of the fields which are available at its strength in the center of the planet, and so it exits from the North Pole with higher strength, and so it goes back again through the same process and enters through the South Pole. So as we don't see rectangular magnets anywhere in the universe, so these magnetic fields, as they are dynamic and free in the space, they create a spherical shape for all these objects. These spherical shapes are created due to central gravitational field and the field forces of both magnetical, which is atmospheric, and gravitational. So that's why Earth, the Sun, the proton, the electron, they're all in spherical shape. So once you understand that the gravity and the atmospheric, or what we call magnetical field, are of the same origin, then it's easy to understand the rest of the work of the universe. Then you understand that, for example, the distance between the Earth and the Sun is dictated by four forces: the gravitational and magnetical field of the Sun, and the gravitational and magnetical field of the Earth. Then you understand that where the four fields balance each other out is the position where the Earth sits in respect to the Sun. Now change the name to proton and electron, Sun and the Earth, the galaxy in respect to another galaxy, oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen is all the same. So when you understand this, you will understand the magnetic and gravitational fields are made from the same sources. That is the interaction of two similar poles of the plasma or two dissimilar poles of the plasma. And now we have built systems which can replicate this situation and confirm the correctness. So in reality, now we understand how gravity and magnetic fields are created, and as we replicate it, we see there is no need for jetliners or rocket propulsion or wings to fly. We don't see any wings on the Earth, we don't see any jet or rockets or propulsion rockets on Earth, but it's been rotating and maintaining its position for millions of years. So we, as I always say, we copied the birds, we made the airplane, now we're copying the universe, and we're making systems which burn no fuel and maintain and create both gravity and magnetic field at the same time. And now in the Keshe Foundation Center, we have enough of these reactors to duplicate and replicate the working of the Earth, the Sun, or atom and electron, proton, or atoms as molecules. Therefore, now we can translate the same working into the body of a man, or in a material, or in energy systems, or space technology. So now we can explain how life started on this planet. We have systems which can show it, how the first proteins were generated that led to the life as we know it, the life of man and other animals and plants. So everything comes back to one thing, that how much gravitational magnetic field you absorb, or how much gravitational magnetic field you give that the other entities can absorb. And this is the essence and the whole principle of creation in the universe. We look at the energy as both magnetical and gravitational. So you both give and take, and what is the balance is what is left behind to the entity which is needing. This brings us back, as your program is about living in the light. For the first time, we can scientifically explain how people live without consumption of physical food. So we understand the process of creation, and in this process we understand the working of every part of human being. This in fact changes a lot of assumptions and points which has been considered to be true in the world of biology. One of these concepts is that, for example, it's been said that man breathes oxygen and the oxygen goes through the blood. And this oxygen in the blood brightens the color of the blood, and we say the blood is oxygenated. And world of science has made a lot of systems to show the correctness of their own mistake. In fact, no atom, no single item ever crosses the lung into the blood as matter. What happens is that 65% of the air we breathe is nitrogen, 15 to 16% is oxygen, and the balance is carbon and the rest. In fact, if you think scientifically and logically, oxygen is made of 8 electrons, 8 protons, and 8 neutrons. So is a comparison is, let's say, it's like the size of a football. And if you look at the hydrogen which is in the air, is the size of a ping pong. Even nitrogen, which is 70%, 65% of what the air we breathe, is a smaller size football because nitrogen is only 14 and oxygen is 16. And then the carbon which we breathe in even smaller than nitrogen, which is a smaller ball. In fact, what they tell us and we have accepted is like when the man said the earth was the center of the universe. In fact, if oxygen, which is the biggest football, can go through the walls of the lung, then the hydrogen, nitrogen, and carbon should be able to go through too. The oxygenation of, or the brightness of the blood has nothing to do with oxygen crossing the wall of the lung into the bloodstream. What happens is that the nitrogen we breathe in the channels of the lung, through the change of the vacuum condition and the pressures, releases helium. And this helium, if added to some other nitrogens in the blood, in the channels of the lung, become oxygen, and the nitrogen which is lost, the helium, becomes a carbon. This helium itself in the channels of lung releases extreme ultraviolet, which ionizes or changes the hydrogen into releasing energy from its electron. Therefore, this energy of the ionization or motion of the electron from the hydrogen atom is the energy which crosses the wall of the lung and enters the bloodstream. And this energy is equal to what the cells in the blood can absorb and charge up. This is exactly the same process as you have an adapter in the house for the light. As you turn the adapter, you get a brighter light. As you put more energy into the light, you get a brighter light in the room. So it's the same process. So the brightness of the blood when it comes out of the lung is not that it absorbs oxygen, is that it has received energy equal to energy of the electrons of the hydrogen in the ionization process, that it charges up the blood cells across the wall of the lung in the blood cell, in the bloodstream. So in fact what happens in this process, the lung itself converts the matter of nitrogen into a plasma of nitrogen. And this process is not done at a matter level, but on a plasma level. So what happens is that the nitrogen, which is lost energy of a helium, which is 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons, become a carbon. And this carbon with oxygen creates the CO2. And that is why we breathe out CO2 when we breathe oxygen, the air in. And some of the hydrogen, which is left in the lung in the process, links up with some of the oxygen which is created at the same time and creates water, or what is the moisture of the lung. So in fact, no water from the body is absorbed to moisturize the lung layers and keep them separate from each other. The moisture in the lung is generated through the breathing process of the lung itself. So what happens now, if you look at the people who get sick or frail and the breathing system changes due to their illness, we see that sometimes in these cases the lung gets flooded with liquid, and sometimes doctors in the hospital withdraw a liter, 2 liters or 3 liters of water from the lung. The water in the lung does not come from the body, because if it would have come that kind of amount of water from the body, the kidneys would have failed and all the digestion system and the processing in the body would have failed, because it's a large amount of water to extract from the body. So for the first time we can explain and see how the liquid water or liquid in the lung is created through the working of the lung itself, and not from the main operation of the body itself. So what happens when you become weak and frail? The lung function becomes slower and changes slightly, and this leads to creation of moisture in the lung. So the people who go on this, what you call living in the light, or using not eating and just living without eating and drinking, they manage to do the same thing as an ill person, but they control the time, the duration, and the position they want to create this moisture in the lung. So by slowing down the breathing or changing the process of breathing in their body, they allow the lungs to produce enough water, moisture, that the body can absorb out of the lung. So they produce water, what they need, through their breathing in their lungs that is disposed into the body. For the first time scientifically we understand how people can live without water. In respect to the food, that they don't eat any food. In fact, the whole energy of the sun, that is gravitational magnetic field, as it leaves the sun and comes in interaction with the upper surface of the earth gravitational magnetic field, it has a strength which leads to production of nitrogen in a plasma state. And then this nitrogen, through the processes, become matter and falls, rains down on earth through rains and all other processes. This is why we see whenever there is a rain, in environments where there's rain, there's a good agriculture, because the rain brings the nitrogen which is on upper atmosphere down with itself into the ground, and it becomes food for the plant. So if our planet was in different position in respect to sun, that the interaction of gravitational magnetic field of the earth and the sun would not lead to production of nitrogen on the upper level, there would have been no life the way we know on this planet. So the same process as it happens in the lung of the man, with converting the nitrogen to a carbon and oxygen by release of the helium, the same process happens in the atmosphere of the earth. That's why we see carbon, oxygen and hydrogen in the atmosphere of the earth. So the condition of the atmosphere of the earth leads to production of amino acid. So what happens in the earth atmosphere when these gases come in touch with water, which is created itself out of the process of the conversion, the same as the lung, then this water being in touch with the salt, the matter part of the earth, creates the condition where the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen can join together again, and this time create water. So the salt which is on earth, different salts, leads and is the beginning, in conjunction with water and the gases in the air, to the production of protein and beginning of life on this planet. So what we do, we understand for the first time that life was not brought from out of space into this planet, but is created out of its own condition. And in the process of this protein floating in the water or being in the water which has got contains salt and some iron, it creates the condition of the blood, or what we know as blood, and its red color. So if we had protein mixed with different metals, led to the production of meat, and the other proteins which are not, which connected to different materials, led to production of vegetables or vegetation. Now you eat the meat or vegetation, which was the energy from the sun, and in the acids of your stomach, you revert back the same matters, which was as vegetation or meat, back to the energies which they came to the planet themselves down from the atmosphere. So, as the same as the wall of the lung, that no oxygen ever crossed the wall of the lung to the blood, no matter ever crosses the intestine. It's the energy of the matter which crosses the wall and adds its energy to the lymph system. In the blood system, the energy brightens the color of the blood. In the lymph, it makes the lymph system transparent because there's so much energy in it. So the lymphs are the feeding cycle of the body, and the blood is the cleaning system of the body. So the people who go on this living of the light, in the same process as they produce liquid water in their lung, they convert part of the energy of the nitrogen because of the liquid in the blood through the same process into energy which can be fed into the lymph. So the man who breathes, changes his breathing and creates the right amount of liquid, will convert the right amount of energy to go to the lymph as much as the water is needed for the body. And that's how these people, they call themselves, they live with the light. In fact, they convert, or they bring the body, the lung, to become the energy supplier both for the blood and for the lymph. This is the reason, that's why as they produce enough liquid, these people have no problem with sticking of their intestine together, because the same kind of liquid is released for the intestine by the lung. So everything is controlled through the breathing process in the lung for both food and all the other needs of the body. So in fact, they don't create any urine or any filth that the body needs to reject. They just produce enough that it keeps the functioning of the kidneys and everything else to be done. You might ask, so where do they get all the vitamins and the minerals they need then? This goes back to the principle that you have what is called parothyroid glands. There are 4 of them, which is supposed to be around the thyroid gland. And one of these glands is responsible for packaging. That is, if the package of the plasma from the lymph is going to be the energy of the copper, energy of the calcium, or energy of magnesium. So these glands decide what the body needs at what point, and they allow the conversion of it. This is normal for the people who eat food as well. All of us don't eat balanced food with all the vitamins and minerals. So these parothyroid glands always done this. Now they do it with more efficiency because they only receive one level of energy. And then in conjunction with thymus gland, they decide how solid or what liquid this material which the parothyroid gland decided will become. If this become part of the tissue, heart tissue of the muscle of the heart, or it becomes part of the tissue of the, for example, liver. So anyone who can learn the breathing technique in respect to his own or her own body can live off the light. So in fact, you don't live off the light, you live off the nitrogen, which came originally as magnetic gravitational field plasma from the sun. And in interaction with the Earth gravitational magnetic field, become the package of the plasma of the nitrogen. So there is no mystery in the people who say they're living off the light. They're living off the nitrogen. And we understand the full process scientifically now. So anyone can live a life by just breathing of the air from the atmosphere if they know how to change and convert the breathing rate and the position and cavity condition of their lungs. So the mystery of the living of light or living in light is over. In fact, if you want to understand it more, the people who want to live without so many weeks or months without the food, measure the breathing rates before they start, they photograph their posture and the way they stand or they sit, and then do it in the time when they go in there, what they call it, living in the light. Then you will see they can only do it by reducing the speed of the breathing and by positioning themselves in a certain position that the nitrogen can lead to just enough liquid that the body needs and just enough energy conversion of the hydrogen that it can be fed into the lymph.
Okay, so when you transform when you change the rhythm of your breath, do you have to do all the process consciously in order to be able to live on light, or can you do it without knowing all the effects on your body and still be able to live from light?
We, all of us, live partially through this process. We partially receive part of our energy through our breathing, not through our digestion. Some of us, when decide to, we call it living of the light or living in the light, have learned how to trigger the point or the process. And some people do it naturally because their body has come to a condition that they can do this themselves. Yes. In some cases, especially if you look at the young generation of women in Greece, it's become fashionable with them to smoke to stay slim. Or some people, when they stop smoking, they start putting weight on. So in these people, the lung condition has changed in absorbing and converting energy of the nitrogen into the body. So the surplus energy, which is rejected when you breathe, when you smoke, has changed the condition now that you don't smoke to absorb and convert this energy, and then it feeds the body. In fact, the becoming fat after the stop smoking is due to conversion of the nitrogen into energy into the lymph. This energy was the energy which was used to get rid of or try to digest part of the nicotine. Now it's fed into the body direct, and then it shows itself as energy, and then you eat food on top of it, so it gets stored as fat. So one uses in one way to use the energy like the girls in Greece, or somebody in some cases that energy becomes the fat. So sometimes we can choose, and sometimes body chooses itself. Therefore, you can even stay alive for months and years in the desert where there is no food if you know how to control your lungs absorption of the oxygen or the air. In this condition, you have to create a condition that the body creates more moisture in the lung that compensates for what you lose in the heat.
So thank you, Mr. Kesh, for this sharing on the scientific part of how it is possible to live from light. Thank you for this testimony on Freedom Generation.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.